Korean proverbs state "시작이 반이다," or starting is half the task. This is the Producers Lounge podcast, second cycle. I'm your host, Richard Tucci, and on this week's episode, we have producer Kim Evey, one of the producers behind the first hit narrative web series, The Guild, and also one of the founders of Geek and Sundry with Felicia Day. Kim first produced Gorgeous Tiny Chicken Machine Show, which she successfully sold to Sony, and then teamed up with Felicia Day after meeting her at Acme Comedy, where Kim taught sketch and improv classes. Kim invited Felicia to join her artist group, and together they turned Felicia's script into a hit web series that lasted 6 seasons. I met Kim at a trendy brunch spot on Abbot Kinney, and she was delightful to talk to. Here now is my interview with Kim Evey.
I'm going to consult Yelp. I always do. I like to see what people like at places. I'm thinking about the chicken hash, but all right. I don't see it on there, but I'm going to get it anyway.
Okay.
The chicken hash.
And then we're going to go with the breakfast burrito chorizo.
I love a good breakfast burrito and huevos also. But I went to the doctor and I have really high cholesterol. Oh, really crazy high cholesterol.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which is bizarre, yeah.
It's not due to stress, is it? Or
maybe. I don't know. And I thought my husband was going to, the same thing was going to happen to him because we basically eat the same thing. But then he got his blood done, and his is a little bit high, but not like crazy high like mine is. Mine's crazy high. So,
how did you first meet her?
We met in 2002 at Acme Comedy Theater.
Was that up in Sierra?
No, it was here in LA.
The Doers first came to LA to be a sketch comedian, right?
Yeah, well, to be an actress. Yeah. So.
Living the dream.
Living the dreams. Yeah, and I did it for a while, but, and I was making a living at it, but I was going crazy just not having anything to do during the days in between,
I was reading a lot of articles about you in research. Not in stalking, they're very safety. But basically, like, you grew up in New Mexico originally, and then went to Seattle and did comedy there. And then you came to LA, I guess, in 2000, Philly, or?
2000.
So as far as your actress, did you want to go into comedy? Were you... Because I have a lot of Asian actor friends who also say, oh, they only want you if you can do kung fu. That kind of stereotype.
Yeah. I did. I had done a lot of improv when I was in Seattle. I was part of a company, and we did actually kind of... Well, at the time, Christopher Guest movies didn't exist, so... back then I couldn't say like, oh, we do like scenario-based improv the way Christopher Guest does, So we would all come up with characters, and we would know basically plot points, but then every night we would improvise the shows, and they would always turn out a little bit differently. So
it was more of a long-form Randall than, say, like Whose Line Is It? And They Sketch It.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but they were more, as we went on, they were more like self-contained plays, So it wasn't like, we'd start with a topic and then improvise, and then it was like we'd create the characters in our rehearsals, and then we, have these worlds that we could go and play with, when we started the shows. Oh yeah, but I think I came out here, as everybody does. I was pretty naive and thinking, like, oh, I can do anything, I can do it all, and then soon you realize, well, there's it's harder, I think, in comedy to break in a little bit, in television actually. When I came out, I think right before then, or maybe in the 80s and 90s, you could get guest stars easier on comedies, and they would see you. But I feel like when Friends came around, like, that made the sitcom so big that suddenly it made guest starring on a sitcom, just as attractive to movie stars and to other TV people. So there was a lot less of an opportunity
to sweep, basically, and say that was the guest star, and that's it.
Yeah, but even any guest star spot, it was just harder and harder to get, to get even a little post star in a comedy, whereas, in the landscape changed. So, I was able to get TV roles in dramas where they needed, like nurses and doctors and lawyers and, things like that. So.
What was the worst audition you had?
Well, it was for a commercial, and it was for, I think it was for insurance, but it doesn't really matter. But they said you have to put. I was dressed in a business suit, and they said you need to put this bucket on your head, and then you need to take this pointer and explain, this whatever it was, but you have to do it by bleating like a goat. What? Yeah, exactly. Because, I don't remember the context of the rest of the commercial, so, but I don't know why I had to wear a bucket on my head either. I can't remember that, but I just remember leaving going like, well, that was humiliating. Like, that was just downright weird. Like, you get asked to do a lot of things, and then, yeah, so it was like, meh. That sounds like more like a sheep, I guess.
Or our R2D2, I guess.
Yeah. But that, and then I remember when I was in Seattle, actually, and there weren't as many commercial auditions that would come through Seattle. So when a big, national spot came, it was super exciting because you had the opportunity to, maybe make a little money. And so I got a call to come dressed like in the costume of your native land. And yeah, and I'm Korean and I don't have any like native Korean stuff, but I had a kimono that I had gotten because I had actually traveled to Japan. So I put on this kimono and I went, and it was a really hot day in Seattle. And because, Seattle's only nice 3 months out of the year, most places aren't equipped with air conditioning, or a lot of places aren't. So I go up this elevator and I go, they're having the auditions in a hotel room. And I get out.
That's not a good sign.
I think it was just because it was a real audition, but it was because the director had flown in and that's where he wanted to do it. And it was just easier. So I go into the hallway from the elevator, and there's just, like people of every ethnicity dressed as, from their native land, sweating bullets, miserable, uncomfortable, and just like everybody like wilting, So there's like people, in these beautiful headdresses, but everybody's just like kind of slumped against the wall and like fanning themselves with whatever they can, and yeah, it was pretty awful and pretty great. I was just like, first of all, just when you have to go to an audition and you have to like walk around, when you have to walk from your car to wherever in a kimono, it's just weird. So, but yeah, so that was
okay. I will pay money for pictures of that hallway just to see like the Disney.
It's a small world in reality.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was definitely felt. There are some times in your life where you're like, well, this is a scene from a movie.
Yeah. Well, so then you came to LA in 2000, and then
I did.
You pitched a gorgeous tiny chicken machine show in 05, right? Or when did you sell that to Soda?
I think I sold it. I think I pitched it in 06 and sold it in 07.
Okay, so that 6-year span, you're doing a lot of acting, a lot of pitch and writing, selling. How did you survive that 6-year span? Because I've heard a statistic that most people, there's a 50% drop-off rate of people who don't survive the first 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I had to get a day job. Actually, it was interesting. The first year I moved out here, I barely stayed here because I had a job in Seattle as an actor where I would go to conventions and trade shows as a Microsoft representative. I would learn scripts and I would, talk about products, and I didn't know anything about the products. I only knew what I memorized in the script.
Epic compliment on the house.
Oh, thank you very
much. Oh, thank you. And what was I saying? I got distracted by this because I'm like, what is it? It's like a pretzel, but it looks like
a weapon from Star Trek.
It does. It looks like future food.
Yeah, you can go for it. I'm trying to stay off her carbs like that.
Oh, that's good. See, I need to. The butter is what I have to stay away from, apparently.
Or might the butter hold.
Giant. Yeah, you're allowed to have the butter. I can have the bread. Okay, I'm gonna rip one of these off. It's just like a pretzel. It's like a not salted pretzel. Yeah. Essentially. That's interesting. And this is the Star Trek bread of death.
Exactly. So you would do like Microsoft rep shows and
yeah, and I had just done yeah, maybe a handful of them. And then for whatever reason, the year that I moved out to Los Angeles, the woman that I was working for just got a ton of jobs. And so she kept calling me and saying, these paid really well for, the money that I was making at the time. I was not making great money. So I was happy to do them. But I probably was not in LA for like 7 months out of the first few that I was here because I was just doing this. And then, like I do, so I saved up all this money. I was like, I'm gonna write. I'm gonna do something. And instead, I had no structure, and I ended up just like kind of getting depressed. And like I remember, I was still sending out my resumes. I was still doing all the stuff that I had to do, but I was just sort of there's no joy in it. And then eventually, after a few months, I ran out of money, and I started to temp. And then I ended up getting a really great job in post-production as an assistant at Warner Brothers. And it was great because it was like in an office on the lot over on Formosa. So it was like this weird side post house that Warner Brothers had.
Oh, yeah.
And, and I worked for a guy who was never around. And so I had, like it was a fine survival job, and my boss was my friend who was also an actor, and so she would let me go on auditions, and
Really? Okay.
and I did that for about a year, and then and that's when I started doing Acme Comedy Theater. So during this whole time, I had gone to Improv Olympic and done some classes there, and then through meeting people there, I think I met another group. And this guy named, I think this guy named Michael said, "Hey, I'm doing a comedy group with this guy Travis. You should come and do it." So I did some improv with them, and then that led me to Acme to the sketch writing class. And
then as you're kind of over the 6 years, I imagine you're doing a lot of the networking stuff. Like for me, when I got to LA, I went to a lot of networking parties, and they weren't like networking with 40 people. They were networking with like, hey, come network, and it's just a bunch of people kind of that you're saying lava. And I don't know about you, but I always felt those kind of networking events to be common but up here. That's just the saying on of people all looking for a job amongst each other.
yeah, well, it's interesting because as an actor, what ended up happening was working at Acme ended up being my network. So and yeah, I mean, there's communities within communities in the comedy world here, and so there's a ton of overlap and a ton of people, that I know, but I don't know well, or I know their friend really well, and I know who they are, but they don't know who I am, kind of thing. And but Acme ended up being bad because, not only you're thrown into this class with a bunch of people that you don't know, and then as you go up the ladder, you're meeting other people in other classes. The people that are graduating and getting better are coming up with you, and so that ended up being, like basically everything that happened to me for producing started at Acme.
If did you find Acme beneficial, certain regards, as opposed to Improv Olympics or the other studios? Or did some have advantages over others, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's really just wherever you feel comfortable. And, for whatever reason, at Improv Olympic, I always felt a little bit on the outside. Some of it was that I was a little bit older. I was in my 30s when I started, and a lot of people, when, they're starting out in improv, they're in their early 20s, early mid-20s, and they're super hungry, and they're just really, there's just a different vibe, and, but I had already lived through all of my 20s, so I was kind of like, well, I'm not interested in the whole, I mean, I remember one girl, like, on a break at Improv Olympic, we walked to get water, and she ended up telling me some drama that she was having with her and this girl that she was having an affair with. I mean, this like crazy stuff, and I was like, okay, this is not really why I'm here. Acme for me was just the place that I felt really comfortable, and ended up clicking with the classes and clicking with a lot of the people in the classes. So those are the people. It's like, you're sort of networking, you're meeting these people, and then, I mean, so many of the people that I knew when I started at Acme, I still know, and I still, work like, so.
Now, you mentioned that when you first did 6 months of, I'm going to write, but it didn't really work, you lacked structure. And I also read somewhere that you had actually joined the this creative organization group, and Felicia was also in it, and that's where you two had met. Is that true? Was that through Acme?
No, actually, that was just through some girlfriends that I had, we were all complaining about the same thing, like lack of structure, I was acting and trying to write, and there were, there was a couple of other actresses, a director, and so we just decided we were going to get together once a week at an insanely early hour for all of us at like 8 o'clock in the morning on a Monday, so that we couldn't, because we were like, if we do that, nobody can be like, I got an audition. It's like, well, you can't have an audition before 10, so you can be at the 8 o'clock meeting.
This is true.
So, so we did that, and actually Felicia wasn't in it initially, and she had taken a writing class, so at Acme, I eventually ended up teaching one of the sketch writing classes, like the beginning level sketch writing class, and Felicia was in it, and she was supremely talented, like, she didn't need my help at all, but so I met her then, and we really liked each other. And then, she would do things like she invited me to her housewarming, and so we had these like little connections, but little more like hanging out. But I just kept thinking, I really like this girl. I really want to get to know her. And so a few months later, we finally had lunch, and she was saying, because I was like, what are you doing? Because, I thought, oh, Felicia, she's a working actress. She must have this really great, amazing, life. She's moving to this new house. And she was like, well, do you know what World of Warcraft is? And I was like, yeah, I've heard of it, And she was like, I'm kind of addicted to it. And she was, kind of joking, but I think she was also serious. So I think she was playing a lot. And, so I told her about this group, and I was like, I have no idea if you're interested. I don't know if it's up your alley. Sometimes it's a little oovy groovy. Sometimes it's not. It's very like based in like set a goal, report back as you make your goal. But then there's also sometimes they do like exercises or things, that may or may not be your speed. And so she ended up coming.
So you were organizing this create. Is that what?
Well, not me. It's sort of like a group of us, We're all in it together. There wasn't like a leader, really.
It was a socialist democracy.
It was a socialist democracy. Creative.
What were some of the rules and structure of this group? You mentioned sometimes there was Zuzu sometimes there were Morses. So how did it kind of play?
Thank you. Wow. This looks amazing.
Great.
No, this is amazing. Thank you. Want a bite? Ready? Can you try some?
Oh.
You'll see.
No, I go. Thank you. I'm from New England. We're very like, no, please. I
don't know anything about the East Coast. That's the other thing. I've never lived on the East Coast, so.
Well, if you never get a chance to visit Connecticut, don't.
Oh, okay. So the basic rules of the group, I think, were that we would just go around and we would set goals, and there could be short-term goals or they could be long-term goals. And then you had to say what you were going to do that week to achieve them. And then you had to report back the next week and saying what you did and what else. And then it's very funny because there was all women. So at a certain point, we were just as into like the lists and how we were keeping track of it as we were like what we were keeping track of. Because literally we started like color coding things, and it would be like, somebody would come in and be like, well, I decided that the list was not as helpful as this grid that I made. And then I color coded, like my personal stuff versus my work stuff versus my, and we're all like, ooh. So.
Oh my God, my friend Christina did that. I did not realize that was an entire female gender thing. That's amazing.
I think it is.
Well, I also do that as well sometimes, that I'm very in touch with my feminine side.
There you go. I mean, do guys get a rush when they walk into Staples?
I do.
Okay.
But a lot of guys I know get a rush when they walk in a Home Depot.
Right.
Because that is, we go in and we fall in love with the idea of being a mountain man and building a house, Like, me and my other producing friends, they always say, oh, Kinko's is like the hot place to be,
Uh-huh. But yeah, definitely. I mean, groups like that, I mean, I can't survive, without some sort of accountability to somebody, somewhere. So, otherwise I just sort of, it's hard. It's really hard in Los Angeles, especially, as an actor.
Were all these friends, were they like, was it where did you meet? Like, was it difficult to organize? Because everybody's in different parts of the town. Or were you all in, like, one area?
No, we were all in different areas, so the meeting would move every week. You would try to sort of mix it up so, we'd have to share, like, the driving drudgery. It might have just been, like, 3 of us that started it, and then, I invited another woman who was sort of talking about, just like if I would get into conversations with people, which you do a lot in LA, saying, like, what are you doing? Oh, well, I'm trying to motivate myself too, blah, 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 blah. Then I'd be like, hey, I have this group. If you want to meet with us, it's really motivating. So,
How did you decide these are the people I want to work with? Because in an average, when you're actually in LA, like you said, you're constantly meeting tons of people. Some are great, and others you don't want to be in the same house with. How do you decide who are your work partners? Who do you want to partner?
I mean, with both of those things, it wasn't a conscious choice of like, I want to work with this person. It was more like I want to be friends with this person, and they also happen to be creative, and we want to be creative together, So for Greg and I were married when we pitched Gorgeous Tiny. Oh. And what happened with that, I wish I had brought him with me. When he first moved to LA, which was like 20 years ago, he was doing a public access comedy show called Skip TV. That was just him and his friends, just a bunch of random sketches and silly things. And, he was cutting it on the old machines because the thing is, with public access, you could use their bays if, in exchange for putting it on public access. So he'd been doing that, and then we met at the sketch comedy place. We wrote a lot of sketches together with other people, and then he just decided, I think as software started to become, affordable, he just decided, you know what, I'm going to teach myself how to use this software. I want to teach myself how to edit so that I can do more, like Skip TV stuff. And then he kind of went, well, we have so much material that we've already written, for the stage, we'll just adapt it. So I think the first thing he did was actually a short film, and he had somebody else direct it and edit it. And then after that, he just started, making these little shorts. And at one point, I got an email with the 2 Chinese guys lip syncing on YouTube. I got a little email like, watch this video, it's really funny. And I watched it and I went, oh, that's really funny. And I went into Greg's office and I was like, hey, do you know YouTube? And he was like, yeah. And I said, you should put your videos on YouTube. Like, I think they would really work. And he was like, and he's very resistant. He was very like Grandpa Benson. He didn't want to, he was like, well, that's for kids. And he was like, it's not, it's not the same. It's not going to work. That's like a lip syncing thing. And then there's like animals that are funny. And I said, no, I really do think like, I got past this thing because it was short and funny. Somebody liked it. It was very easy to say, hey, check this out. And that's what your stuff is. And so he ended up putting things on YouTube and getting early success that way. His first thing was a thing called Greg Hits Hollywood, where I think people later told us years later that Howie Mandel did a similar thing on his show. So whether Howie Mandel or somebody on his staff saw Greg do it, or if it's not it's just an idea. You can't copyright an idea. So he interviews people, but then he hits them in the face with a microphone, with soft foam microphone when they're answering, and he gets their reaction. So that was up on YouTube, and that went viral. He's got very popular, and then at one point I said, will you shoot Gorgeous Tiny Chicken Machine Show? Because this is back in the day when YouTube had a front page that was curated by their editors, and so basically, if they found something that they liked, you would start, at the top of the front page, and then every day you would go down. So you'd stay on there for about a week because, your video would just be on the front page and then would get replaced.
Now it's all analytics.
Now it's all analytics and advertising, and, it's all big business now. But back then it was just people, looking for something that was different. They didn't want to just be like, here's another cat riding a skateboard, here's another. So with Gorgeous Tiny Chicken Machine Show, we had done it for the stage, and it was very bare bones, but I had always envisioned that it would be, like this crazy, vibrant Japanese, like, because when I went to Japan, I would watch the television, and I would just be like, I don't know what's happening. It's insane. So I just had a feeling if we could record that and have a really colorful thumbnail and the title, Gorgeous Tiny Chicken Machine Show, I was just like, I would click on that, because it's like, what is that? So
Literally 2.2 million people who saw it.
yeah, and it worked, back in the day. And it's funny because now, one of the things that they always say is, you have to make your thumbnail really eye-catching, and so we had a really eye-catching thumbnail. Yeah, so that was the beginning of Gorgeous Signing, and that was just me going into Greg and saying, like, will you please, like, pacify your wife and just do this for me? I just really want to do this, because I didn't know how to direct and I didn't know how to edit. So he did that. And then...
Go ahead and speak. Go ahead.
Okay.
She's staring at it like, no, I'm depriving a starving Asian person.
I know. It's really good. I just did a music video last week and you literally had the talent, the director, the DP, and one, I guess it was a gaffer, first AC, sort of. It was just an assistant to the GP, basically.
And curious,
And then me.
Who was the band?
It's a duo called Paul and Storm. I actually produced a show for them on Geek and Sundry called Learning Town, and they're doing a video for their upcoming album release. So.
It's interesting because when you got into Guild, you were able to build a really big cult following because you were able to go onto blogs and build and renovate hey, the person you like is in this show, check it out online, and also from the World of Warcraft community as well. And you're able to get basically an audience that was willing to pay for the show prior to Kickstarter, just putting up at night spells. In that, do you think that was inherently in the intellectual property? That you found it, that if you didn't have that unique kind of intellectual property that worked out well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was because it was gamers and geeks, and there was just a built-in community. I mean, it was such a thing, like a find a need and fill it kind of thing, in terms of there might have been another one, but I didn't know of another sitcom for gamers about gamers that was written by a gamer, and I think the fact that people understood that Felicia was so authentic just initially made this really tight community, and they wanted to, they really liked the show, and they also really wanted to help her, so, but yeah, I mean, I think, the geek gamer aspect of it was really, really important. So, I mean, these are people who were in 2007. They're the people who were already saying, like, oh, I'm watching my content on the web, not really using TV. Like, a lot of people are saying that now, but, I mean,
When did you decide to make the jump, basically, okay, I'm going to be a producer now? Was it just out of necessity, or was it just...
Yeah, it was in 2000... I think it was the end of 2008. So we'd just done season 2 of the Guild, and things were starting to get a lot more, a lot busier in the in-between times, so...
Season 2 was the one financed by Microsoft, right?
Yeah, it was the first time we were financed by Microsoft. And then, there was a business that we had established, and we were starting to, have a lot of things sculpted to that as well. So I actually don't think that I officially stopped acting until... I don't know, 2000. Let's see, I'm trying to think of whatever season 4 of the Guild was, because actually my theatrical agents called and they said, hey, we're kind of thinning out the herd and we love you, but we're sorry, we're going to have to let you go. And I was like, okay. I was completely fine with it, because I was kind of thinking that I should probably call them and say, I don't know if my heart is really in this, because I think I'd had several auditions over that summer and just didn't do well with them and just didn't really care. And I thought, I mean, I still love acting. I still love acting for my, in projects that my friends do. If they need, if they need what I can do, I'm happy to do it. But just in terms of the drive that an actor needs to have, I mean, I would hear on the answering machine that it was, my agents, my theatrical agents, and my heart would sink. And the first thought that I would have was, I hope there aren't that many lines. And I was like, oh, that's not what actors think. Most actors are like yes, an audition, give me, it's got to be the meatiest, I would always think, I hope there's not that many lines, and I hope I don't have to cry, because I don't know how to cry in here, and so it's hard for me to do that. So that was kind of my clue that acting wasn't really what my heart was.
So in all your work in the web, and your work now, what kind of producer do you find that you are? Because we're finance producer, the pitch producer, the line producer. Where do you find your niche, your pigeonhole is?
I guess I'm somewhere, I'm a creative producer, and then I also share a lot of line producer duties, and that's just because, like you said, we've always been smaller. So there have been most seasons, I think seasons 2, 3, and 4, we didn't have a production coordinator. So I would help the line producer a lot. So I would sort of co-line produce, do a lot of those duties.
Which, by the way, I know Elizabeth.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask if you knew her, actually.
Yeah, I actually met her. She knows Nate Aitchison, who's a Chatlin guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were talking a while about that. So
I thought Elizabeth was a Chaplin person, too, no? She just knows.
she is.
Okay.
So, but I met her 3 years, so
Okay.
yeah. She's really cool.
Oh, yeah, she's amazing. Well, she and I recently had dinner because when we first did the Guild, she worked on season 2. She just graduated from Chapman. I had never, had a real budget in my life. So together we were just sort of slogging through this thing. And, I think at the end I don't think that, I honestly can't remember, but I don't think there was any animosity. But I also think that it wasn't the greatest experience because we just didn't really do it right. We did it as best we could, but there were just a lot of things that we didn't do very well. And so, it was kind of okay, so the next season we decided to, try to find a different line producer. And then later I just emailed her and because I was looking for a line producer actually for Learning Town. Oh. And I thought, I haven't talked to Elizabeth in years, and and since she did the Guilds, now she's got 4 years of producing under her belt. I bet she's amazing, because there were things about her, even at the time, that I remembered, were amazing. And I thought, I bet she's really, honed all of those skills. And so she wasn't able to do Learning Town, but she actually referred me to an amazing line producer for Learning Town as well. Awesome. And then we had dinner and just kind of, talked about old times and
House.
yeah. So anyway, to answer your question, I'm definitely somewhere in between a creative producer and a line producer. I don't have enough experience in other arenas to kind of understand even how that works, with a studio film versus an indie film versus a web series versus a student film. I think, web series falls somewhere in between student film and indie film, obviously. So that I think, I consulted with Felicia on all of her scripts every year. I really like doing that. I think I'm really good at that, and I belong to a writing group too, where we give each other notes and, and I think it's because I have acted and because I've done just a tiny bit of directing, but, and then I've done a little bit of writing, I think I'm good at giving notes. So I think, part of giving notes well is being insightful and giving the right notes, but then part of giving notes as a producer is also giving the notes in the right way. But then I find, that I really just, I love every aspect from, post-production is my least favorite, just because I love going in and watching the cuts and everything, but I like just the hands-on excitement from when you start in pre-production, when you're just starting to assemble everything, making all the phone calls, getting all of your crew together, that through, that's probably, strangely, my favorite part, is pre-production, which is bizarre. But I think it's because, once we get into production, there's just less for me to do except put out fires. But because, everybody by then, hopefully, you've hired the right people, they're all doing their jobs, things are going well, and then you just turn into the extra person who's, sometimes you're the producer, sometimes you're the PA, cleaning up coffee when everybody else is out, you've got all hands on deck doing something else, and it's well, I guess I'll do that.
That was one of the great lessons I learned actually on my first internship was with this company called Ergon Entertainment. And it was what I affectionately refer to as the summer of 7 black guys and mall. But the lead producer had chosen to take on a short film to help out a friend of his that he believed in as a director. And we were shooting in this big, like, airplane air set. And what I found unique and amazing was that he was this producer. He'd done Hollywood feature films released by Universal. But on the first day of production, he was basically going around handing out egg McMuffin sandwiches to the crew for breakfast. And eventually, like, I came up and I answered, like, do you want me to do, like, yes. And then he walked away. So that was astonishing. Like, the producer literally has to do whatever's necessary to get the project done.
Oh yeah, Sarah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's so much harder at our level, I think, because there's not that separation. And certainly I've had to get used to it. My assistants would say, like, you know, you don't have to do that. We'll do that. And I'm like, oh, right. Okay. I forgot because I was doing that for 4 years. So now, great. If you're going to do it, that's wonderful. But so, you know, it works both ways in that people protect you, but then at the same time, sometimes it gets really casual and I want to pull my hair on and go like, I know I'm really nice and I don't want to be, you know, a bitch right now, but you can't just stand around talking right now. Like, now is the time for working. Now, you know, whereas sometimes it's super casual and you're just like, I want everybody to feel like they're, you know, a part of everything and having a good time. So there's a fine line, you know. That's challenging when you work with smaller groups, you know.
And can we talk about the status of Beacon Sundry right now? Because you told me about the company, so I'm not sure what the cause of the rise are.
Well, I left because after we did season 1, we sort of had to look at, you know, how successful were the things that we had done, and then what do we want to do next based on the budgets that we're getting, based on the things that were successful. And, you know, it really kind of turned into this realization that the things that were working were gaming, the things that were not working were, you know, long-form narrative. So I'd done The Guild, I had done Written by a Kid, and I had done Learning Town. And all of those were, you know, on the higher end of the budgets that we were spending, and they were all narrative. And they were all varying degrees of successful, but none of them, even Written by a Kid, was not a breakout enough of a breakout hit to really sustain the series for another season. I think, I haven't looked recently, but I think now the episodes that have Joss Whedon in them and the episode that was directed by Rhett and Link, who are big YouTubers, I think they're all approaching 1 million views, I think, or maybe not. They might not even. But both of those have definitely gone over the 500,000 view marks. And then the others that just, you know, the tail went down really, really fast. So I just had to decide, well, what do I want to do? Because I love producing narrative, and I wasn't, I realized that I wasn't as good at being an executive producer. I wasn't as good at, you know, It's not true. It's not that I wasn't good at managing a bunch of projects. It's just that it wasn't very interesting to me. Like, I wanted to be, again, you know, the person who was helping to make the phone calls and in there and on the set. And, you know, I wasn't as interested in saying like, oh, okay, well, here's money, go make that, you know, I'll call you to make sure everything's going okay. And then I'll show up on set a couple days, like, you know. And so that's a little bit more where things were headed.
I mean, it sounds like from what you're saying, your skills lend more to like a television showrunner than anything, where you're working with a project from stem to stern, from the pilot and their inception all the way through to the whenever the company tries to cancel it.
Yeah. So, and then the thing that I don't have experience with is, you know, going out and getting the funding.
But there's the thing, for a producer who lacks the experience in finding funding, you're able to get pretty solid funding for Geek and Sundry, for the Guild, for Tiny Chicken, or just Tiny I'm sorry, the Chicken Machine.
Yes.
I mean, how did you accomplish? Because that takes balls. I mean,
you know, it was, you know, I give so much of the credits in Felicia for the Guild. I think that, she was able to learn from my mistakes with Gorgeous Tiny in a way. I think it was nice that I had done that first because, I made a deal with Sony, which is, a giant corporation. And so there were things, it was amazing. I don't want to denigrate them for doing it because it was a really great experience to be able to, get paid to do this thing that I loved. But I knew early on, I felt like, okay, this can be more than just a little show. I wanted to, have stuffed animals and characters and, T-shirts and, all these things that I really wanted to do. And not because I thought, I'm going to make a ton of money, but just because I thought people would like them and I would like them. And so those were the kinds of things where with Sony, I went in and saying, I want to do X, Y, Z. And they were like, yeah, totally. We're all about that. We're going to, we have this department that'll do this for you and this department that'll do that for you. And then in the end, it was for them such an experimental time that, they could get merchandise, any arm of Sony's merchandising to make a Gorgeous Tiny T-shirt. That just was not going to happen, But I didn't understand it. And I also, was afraid of, I'd never worked with the company before, so I didn't want to screw up my deal. I didn't want to offend people. So I just sort of waited. I would send these polite emails. Hi, is this happening? And then I'd get a polite email back. Oh, we'll look into it. So Felicia saw that, and then she realized that with the Guild, we could keep doing it. We didn't need anybody to continue to make it the way that we were making it. We realized after season 1, when I ended up figuring out how to author a DVD and get a DVD made, and we were able to pay people back with the funds from that DVD. So knowing that there was enough demand, there would be enough demand at the end of the season that we would even be able to pay people back, gave us a great freedom, So, the fact that she was able to hold out for the deal that she wanted, I think a lot of it was due to the fact that she saw what had happened with me and my show, and she went, well, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to hand over the reins of this show to anybody because nobody knows it better than I do. And at that time, honestly, nobody knew the web better than Felicia did. So many things I go now and you hear, it's the same stuff that you hear at every panel. It's just you have to be authentic. You have to have a connection to your audience, your social networking. You have to be interactive. They have to feel like they know you, that, all this stuff that are the things that, Felicia did initially, organically, So the funding came from Microsoft, actually, after we've had a bunch of other meetings. And, and we got an agent too, and he helped us. So we got an agent named George Ruiz at ICM, and he helped us set up a bunch of meetings, prior to the Microsoft deal. And then Microsoft actually came hauling for us, which was amazing. Yeah. And, they ended up being the deal that Felicia wanted because they were the ones that said, we make video games. We do not make a web series or any sort of, narrative show. You guys are clearly doing okay, because by that time the season had rolled out. And so they were just looking for content, and they went, okay, they wanted us to submit the scripts so they could make sure that they were family friendly and what they were expecting. But other than that, they weren't, there was no studio tinkering. It wasn't like, oh, what would be better? It would be if this storyline went this way. There was none of that. So it was amazing, yeah. And then with Geek and Sundry, again, just based on the reputation that we had from the Guild, they came to Felicia, and then, she said, do you want to do this Geek and Sundry thing with me? And I said, absolutely. So, they were just going around to producers of all shapes and sizes and saying, what would you do if we gave you this channel?
So what's next for you?
I am talking a lot to a lot of different people, doing a lot of independent projects, smaller. I'm thinking that what is next for me is maybe a production company of my own. Because I have actually been, thinking a lot. I took the summer off. I went to DC. I shot a travel pilot with some friends of mine who are a girl geek music duo. And and it was really fun. And, we'll see if there's an audience for it. And but meanwhile, I've just been trying to figure out, how do I bridge the gap between what I've been doing and then now, the people who are funding are Hulu, Netflix, Amazon, and I have a project that I've been shopping, with that Jeff Lewis wrote, who plays Warwick on the Guild, and it's it's really, really funny, and it's really, really great, and you have to have names attached to it to get it in front of anybody, because that's sort of where things have gone now. So,
And that's all, folks. Many thanks to my guest, Kim Evey, for a terrific brunch. Check her and her husband out at youtube.com/mediocrefilms. You can check out their latest video, The Black Friday Shopping Prank, or classics like Gorgeous Tiny Chicken Machine Show. You can also find out more about the Guild and Kim's upcoming projects by visiting the links for this episode on our website. Our music this week is Hungaria by Latché Swing from freemusicarchive.org. Please check them out. If you'd like to submit either jazz music or banner photos for an episode, post a link on our Facebook page. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/theproducerslounge and also subscribe to our YouTube channel for special bonus clips. Remember, you show your support for films by not downloading them, you show your support on Hulu by clicking on the commercials, and you show your support for podcasts by liking and commenting. And you can always check out our website, www.theproducersloungepodcast.com. Thank you again. I'm your host, Richard Tucci. Join us next week for more cocktails and questions, and until then, keep producing dreams.